I really apologize. It it was on my date book and it was in my schedule, but somehow it skipped my mind after lunch. Hmm?
You're not alone, Pang Father.
Totally, I was doing something else.
We also.
But you should have called earlier. This was supposed to be 1 o'clock, diba?
Yes,
Yeah.
Pang Father. No, because Father, I had a mistake also.
So we
I lost
forgot
the link at
also.
1:20 also.
Okay. Um, yeah, because it felt like yeah, because we had a delayed class previously, so it didn't feel right to be having a class now, no?
Yes.
Parang as they say, parang kahapon lamang.
Yes.
Cheryl, where are you?
I was at lunch with my parents' father, so
Hmm,
actually
hmm.
I forgot also. So Alma had
So
called me.
so many people forgot. So I'm not
Yeah.
alone. So I can see Lung there. I was just with Lung this morning in their center. And anyway, so let's go to the class for today. I'm sorry. Let me just, I'll just put out my notes. More patience, patience. Um, okay, okay. Sayang, because this we have a very interesting topic today. Freedom and the human conscience and the morality of human acts. Hmm? Uh, let me see. Let me just share at least the title slide. I'm not going to use the slides because again it will take long. Let me just share the title page. There you are. Share. Okay. Okay. The morality of human acts. Um, let's see. Man, or the spiritual creature we read in Genesis, was made in the image of God. Hmm? So God made man to his image and likeness. He made him male and female. He made them. You know, those three verses are, shall we say, a crescendo of revelation. No, the first point is God made man. Okay, good. He made, not create. Made. To make is to start from pre-existing matter and to make something. To create is to create from nothing. So man was not created from nothing. He was made from pre-existing matter. And that's one of the arguments in my book for evolution. So man evolved from lower creatures, but not evolve in a purely material way, as if matter is capable of becoming something else more than itself. Think about that. Nothing can become more than what it is by its own resources. Why? Because if it could become that, then it should have been that from the very beginning. Hmm? So if matter, or if anything, not just matter, if anything becomes something more, somebody or something who has that more inputted it to that being. You get the point? This is a matter of causality because the cause, remember, this is something very philosophical. I hope you have had your coffee. That the cause flows into the effect. That's the cause effect relationship, and that's the reason why an effect cannot be more than the totality or the sum of its causes. If you notice that something is more than where it came from, there was an input of another cause. And that's what happens with matter. Matter in itself cannot become a more sophisticated matter, more formality. Somebody or something who already has that perfection, that formality, must input it. Example, you have a bunch of iron, wood, leather there sitting. You can wait a million years, that will not become a chair. Even if you shake it so that all the permutations possible can happen, it won't become a chair. The only way for it to become a chair is that if for is somebody who has the formality of the chair in his mind, understands what a chair should be, puts in that design and puts together that matter, those pieces of matter, into what is a chair. What was added was the form of a chair. The matter was already there, all the raw materials, the leather, the wood, the iron, but then the form has to be put in, the design for a chair. That's what form is. Form is really not just design. Form is the what makes a thing what it is. That's the form. The chairness of the chair, so to speak, or the sofaness of the sofa. It's not just the matter of the sofa, but the essence. Okay. Now, here's the thing. When it says therefore that God made man, it even said from the slime of the earth. You see, it started from slime. Obviously, from slime to what we are, there's a big jump. It didn't happen in one blow. It happened in the process of evolution. But even with that, just matter, it won't cut it. Why? Because we have something which is not material. It's not just the design of matter. We're not designed like the plants or the animals. All of that is material, just put together in a more sophisticated way. Physiological processes, more sophisticated. In the case of the plants, it's just living. In the case of the animals, moving and reacting to stimuli. But in the case of man, we have something even more than that. And what is that? We can think. So, in other words, we're spiritual. We can think, and we can direct ourselves freely to what we want. Animals don't do that. Sometimes people think, remember that song of Goldie Hawn in Butterflies Are Free many years ago? That's a film of the 1960s. Butterflies Are Free. Remember? Do you remember that film with Goldie Hawn? You don't. Okay. You're not old enough if you don't remember. Um, Imagine saying something like this: "Butterflies are free, and so are we." That was the song there. Butterflies are not free. Animals are not free. None of those beings are free. Hmm? When animals move, how do they move? They move according to instinct. That's the reason why you can predict their movements. They don't act, they behave according to behavioral patterns. And when it's a matter of reacting to stimulus, the way they react to stimuli also is fixed. That's the reason why you can poison them or do things like that. You can trap them. You put food in front of a dog, he will reach for the food. You put food in front of any one of us, we can think and we can deny it, you know, right? I was presented with food this morning. I was presented with food before lunch, and I was able to resist it because I'm free. But an animal, have you ever seen an animal resist food if it's hungry? Cannot. Hmm? Okay. Now, here's the thing. That is the point that makes us not only exist, but we are made in God's image because He is spiritual. We have an intellect and a will. Not image as far as our body or matter is concerned, because God doesn't have a body until He became incarnate with the second person, the second person of the Blessed Trinity. But God, in principle, is spiritual. So, how are we image of God? Insofar as we are spiritual. We're image of Him insofar as we have an intellect that can understand the reality in front of us, and we have a will that can love the reality that's in front of us. Love as in will it, direct ourselves to it. Okay. But then it went a step further. So God made man to His image and breathed into him the breath of life, and he became a living being. That's where image and likeness comes in. God made us to His image insofar as we're spiritual, and then elevated us to His likeness by the indwelling of the Blessed Trinity. I'm a stickler for grammar, for proper form, and I always object to see statements where you have and. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing. Just a minute. Okay. Um, I really object when people put and in a sentence, and then the two extremes of the word and of the conjunction mean the same. If you put and, the two poles of the conjunction must be different. Otherwise, why put and? Just use one. Hmm? So when it says there that God made man to His image and likeness, image and likeness must not mean the same thing. Otherwise, it's redundant. And precisely, I'm explaining to you why. Because image is insofar as we're a spiritual being, but likeness is even more like, not just like in his spiritual nature, but like in his divine, because of the indwelling of his spirit in us. Adam and Eve, from the first moment of their existence, was image, spiritual, and likeness because God breathed His own spirit. And that's the reason why when they committed mortal sin by disobeying God, they ejected the indwelling of the Blessed Trinity and they ceased to become likeness of God. They were image. Any person who's not in the state of grace is image of God, but he's not likeness of God. He loses that divine likeness. God looks at him and doesn't anymore recognize the son or the daughter. He's just a creature, a spiritual creature, but not part of God's family. That's the tragedy of sin. You see? I mean that people don't appreciate, but which we have to help them appreciate. Not to be so nonchalant in committing a mortal sin. Anybody with mortal sin? That's why it says there, no, after the fall, that they were banished from paradise. And I've explained this to you many times. They were not banished as if God sent them out of paradise. God is not like that. But rather, they stepped out of paradise. Not the physical place of paradise, but the state of paradise. The state, the heavenly state of being children of God. They ceased to be that. And that's the reason why they hid. Not because they were naked. They had always been naked. There's nothing wrong with being naked in paradise. But yes, they found themselves bereft of the only of the quality that made them worthy of being in God's presence, in the intimacy of the life of the Blessed Trinity, because they lost that principle. They lost that likeness. Okay? Now, after all that introduction, now we see the relevance of this topic, because part of being or essential to being image of God, not even likeness, image, being spiritual, therefore, is the fact that we're free. Hmm? The will is the capacity, has the capacity rather, to direct itself to whatever object it wants. Of course, it has a proper object. The proper object of the human will is the good. We should go towards the good. Should, ought, but precisely we're free. We have this terrible capacity. It's terrible because it's terrifying when you think of it, to reject the good if we want to. Mhm. The animals are not capable of doing that. And there's a reason why the animals are always quote unquote moral. By the way, the word moral is the same as the word ethical. It means the same thing. The only thing is moral comes from the Latin root, ethical comes from the Greek root. And it means the orientation towards the proper end. What is moral is what is in keeping with the nature of man, so therefore directed towards his proper end. What is ethical means the same thing, and immoral is the contrary. The intellect is the one that is the faculty that can understand the morality or the ethicity of anything, but it's the will that directs the whole organism, meaning to say the person, the spiritual being, towards that end, or rejects it. Again, I say it's a terrible thing to reject the good. So much so, when you think about it, if freedom consists in the capacity to direct oneself to the good, and there's an intrinsic inclination in the spiritual being to move towards the good. The animals and the plants, they have that too. But for them, it's unassailable. That orientation, that tendency is necessary. They can do otherwise. I insist. Animals can behave contrary to their nature. You can't make a pet out of a crocodile. It's not in its nature to be domesticated. Hmm? Why? Because they're reptiles. So, reptiles are very, very stupid beings. Hmm? That's the reason why they almost got extinct. Look at the dinosaurs. They're so huge, but they were obliterated. Why? Because they were stupid. The mammals, on the other hand, because the mammals and the reptiles, they coincided. The first mammals were mice, very small animals, not exactly mice, but very, very similar to it. But just because precisely mammals have a better brain, they survived. I have a window garden here in my office, and I have orchids. And when I started those orchids 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they were attacked by rats. And so I was desperate. What am I going to do? So what I did was I asked the handyman to string a wire, and I plug it every night. So really, anybody who touches it will get electrocuted, right? And sure enough, the next 2 weeks, there were dead mouse, rats, big ones, there in the ground floor in the garden. Some skinned and they were burnt. Okay, then after a while, they were not coming anymore. So the next 2 years, I was not plugging it anymore because I said, wow, they learned that this is a dangerous place. Hmm? And then to my chagrin, about a month ago, again, they attacked. So I said, what's that? They unlearned what they learned? No, that generation died. So this is the new generation who don't know yet, no? So again, I strung the thing since 2 weeks ago. And now of course, there's been no attacks. And most probably they learned it. And then I researched and I realized that the lifespan of rats, the big ones, is 4 years. So no wonder, no? So it lasted 4 years. Now that generation is dead, and they didn't pass on the information to their children, so to speak. So that's it. Mammals are trainable. That's the reason why even lions can be trained. But I still have to see a trained crocodile. So because they're stupid, right? Anyway, so they can be trained not because they're thinking, but they can associate images with sensations. That's what happens there. Remember Pavlov's law of conditioned response. Everybody learns this in biology. It's like that. It's not that they think it or they conclude it. The data, the sensible stimulus just gets associated with each other because of their concurrence. No, there's a concurrence of this sound or this image with this feeling, food or whatever, a pat in the head, and so then they will start do it 100 times, and they will associate the two things. That's the way you train dogs, for example. I've trained dogs, but now let's go back to the human person. Since the human person is capable of directing himself freely to an end, it's not automatic that if he sees something good, he will do it. And if he sees something evil, he won't do it. That's not automatic. Then it stands to reason that he must have a faculty to determine what right and what wrong is, so that he can rightly judge what to pursue. By the way, even with that, it wouldn't have been enough, because freedom is also the capacity to say no to what the intellect has suggested precisely. But it would really be worse if he didn't even have the intellect to do it. And there's the reason why the presence of the will dictates the presence of the intellect. Nothing can be free, or nobody can be free, if he's not at the same time intelligent, because there's like a loose cannon. Uh, the capacity to direct oneself, but without the capacity to know which to direct to, then what will happen? If one has the freedom, but not the intellect, what will happen to him? How will he decide where to direct himself? Then he will do it by knee jerk reactions, by impulse, which, by the way, happens also with people. Happens with children, happens with teenagers, and it, unfortunately, it also happens with adults who have not formed themselves in virtue. Precisely, virtue is the habit, the stable disposition to do what is right. Without that virtue, you may know what's right, but you don't have the, shall we say, the oomph to follow through. Okay? Now, after all that introduction, then let's go to the notion of freedom and responsibility. Because we're free, then we are the author of our actions. And so, therefore, we're responsible for them. As Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. So, if we have the power to choose the end, if we are the author of our actions, then we are responsible for them. There's
Nawala po talaga. Nag-stop po, no?
Yeah,
Wala,
wala.
mukhang naputol
Na,
eh.
na,
Akala ko ako lang.
Wi-Fi.
ako din, na-lag
Akala
out po. Baka na-lag out si ano.
Oo, mukha.
Cheryl Han, baka pwede pakitawagan si Father, na-lag out siya.
Okay, I'll call him.
Thank you.
Father, you're muted. Father.
Oh, he's back na po. Let me see.
Unmute. There you are. Now I'm okay, right? Um, After having said that, then let's go to the so-called morality of human acts. We said that we should have an intellect in order to decide what to do. Now, that act of the intellect regarding the morality or ethicity of human acts is what we call conscience. So, conscience is not a separate faculty. Conscience is rather just a specific act of the intellect. We only have two faculties, the intellect and the will. Now, in the intellect, when it acts on the morality, ethicity of human actions or of human acts, then we call it conscience. Okay? Ah, sidebar, I forgot to mention this. There's a difference between so-called human acts and actions of man. Actions of man are any act or any action that is perpetrated by a human being. That's an act of man. But when we use the term human act, we're specifying it. Those actions that are the result of the conjoint action of the intellect and the will. In other words, acts that we thought about and we freely willed. So if something is done, example, you coughing or you, I don't know what, twitching, those are acts of man, because you're man and that's you acted that, but it's not a human act. Human act is intelligent and free, thought about and willed freely. So that's what we call a human act. Now let's go back to my explanation. Precisely because we are capable of human acts, then we should have the capacity to decide, to figure out what acts are moral and what acts are immoral. Now, for some people, this is a matter of, shall we say, almost like instinct. They will say, I think that's right. No, no, it's not a matter of thinking or feel, or rather, I feel that's right. It's a matter of thinking it through and judging that this is right and this is wrong. Or this is wrong, rather. Every time somebody tells me, Father, is it a sin to ngek? I stop the person. Wrong question. The question is not whether it's a sin. The question is it right or is it wrong? Because sin consists in knowing that something is wrong and willfully doing it, or vice versa, of knowing that something is right and willfully not doing it. That's a sin. If something is wrong, but somebody thought it was right and did it, then he doesn't commit a sin. If, on the other hand, if something is wrong, but somebody thought it was right and didn't do it, it's wrong. It's really wrong. But you thought it was right, then you ought to do it because you thought it was right. If you don't, then you sin. In the equation of the universe, it was really better that you didn't do it because it was really wrong. But it's not creation or it's fiber that's being decided here. What's being decided is the orientation of your will. Is your will oriented towards the good that you have understood or not? So, therefore, if you have understood something as good, even if in reality it's not good, then by identifying yourself with what you thought was good, even if in fact it wasn't good, then you do right, and vice versa. If something was really good, but you thought it was wrong, and you identified yourself with it, then you have oriented your heart, your will, contrary to the will of God, contrary to the good. This is how morality works. So therefore, the question now is, how do you judge the morality of human acts, which is the second part of this class? The sources of morality of the human acts. There are three sources of morality, three factors that converge to decide whether something, an act, is moral or immoral, ethical or unethical. What are these? The first is the so-called moral object. Moral object. The nature of the act vis-a-vis the proper end of man. If an act is in keeping with the proper end of man, then it's moral, it's ethical. If it's contrary, then it's immoral, unethical. Because moris means the end. Ethos is the end. So unethical, it's not pointed to the right end. And this is the most important determinant of morality because it has something to do with the intrinsic nature of the act itself. Is that act pointed towards the end of man or not? So that's the first thing to be thought of. That's the most important thing. Okay? Second source of morality are the circumstances. The circumstances surrounding that act. Who, where, what, when, etc., etc. All the circumstances that can affect the morality of the act. How? It can increase or diminish the intensity, that directionality to that object, or it can diminish it. In other words, a good act, because of circumstances, may become even better or less good. And there are some circumstances that are so intense in their effect on the act itself that it changes their morality or its morality. Those are what we call specifying circumstances. Specifying because it changes the species of the act. It changes the moral object. Example. You have often heard it, no, that murder is wrong, killing a person is wrong, unless it's for self-defense, except when it's for self-defense. That's a very loosely formulated sentence, which is inaccurate. The accurate statement is it's never right to kill an innocent person, period. Because in self-defense, precisely, you're killing a person. But if it's in self-defense, it changes the morality. You're not just killing. The object of an act of self-defense is not to kill a person. The object of an act of self-defense is to protect my own bodily integrity, maintain my own being. It's not to kill the person or to maim the person or whatever. It's to stay alive because each one has an obligation to stay alive. So what happens there? What happens there is that unjust aggressor created a circumstance where staying alive has become inseparable from shooting him. That's why if I'm such a good shot that I can shoot the gun or the hand, then that's what I should do. If I shoot the head instead, then that changes. I'm not just defending myself, I'm making sure I kill him. Then the object changes. It's not anymore self-defense, it's murder. Yeah, but he created a situation, never mind, that will decrease the murderousness of that murder, but it's still murder. Because I had a choice. I could have just neutralized the gun, neutralized the hand that's pointed at me. But instead, I chose to kill him. So the object of my act is not anymore self-defense. The object of my act is to kill him. You see? That's what we mean by specifying circumstance. But most of the time, circumstances are not as intense as that in their effect on the moral object. The moral object remains intact, but its intensity just gets increased or diminished. Another example, alms giving. That's good, right? Give alms to help someone. But what if a person helps beyond what's financially rational for him or for his family? Hmm? See a guy and he's coming home with the paycheck, the weekly paycheck, and that's what's going to keep alive the family definitely over the weekend and for the week to come. And then he sees a beggar, takes pity, and gives him the whole paycheck. Nice. But will that be moral? The moral object is good to help a beggar, but the circumstance is wrong. He gave too much. He didn't think of the consequences to his family, to the well-being of his closest neighbor, who are his wife and his children. So that makes it wrong. Hmm? Maybe it will just diminish the goodness if it's not that serious for the survival of his family. But if what's at stake is the survival of his own family, then that really changes it. That's not anymore a good act. Hmm? It's an act of neglect. Okay? So, first moral object and then the circumstances. Now, the moral object, since it has something to do with the directionality of the act in itself, it's also called in Latin finis operis, the end of the act in itself, finis operis. Hmm? Now, the third factor is what is called the intention. It's what the doer, the agent, the actor, intends with what he's doing. That's why it's called the finis operantis, the end of the operator, the end of the actor, the end of the agent. Of course, in principle, the end of the agent, so it should coincide with the end of the action. You think about it. If I'm going to do an act, sinasakyan ko, di ba? So therefore, my intention should be where that act is headed. That's the normal thing. But it can happen at times that the end of the actor is different from the end of the act in itself. That's what you call a hidden agendum, a hidden agenda. Hmm? Like what? Well, I don't know. Go, for example, this business of fasting. I'm doing IF. Okay. The act in itself, what is it? Well, it's doing IF. Yeah, but what for? In itself, the IF should normally be, well, to keep my body weight, right? Or to lose weight, which is something good if you're overweight. Or you can do it in order to, my intention is not so much to lose weight because I'm okay. My intention is to mortify myself, to do penance. You see? So it changes. Then it really becomes meritorious. Or vice versa. Somebody is supposedly fasting for mortification, but in her heart, she really knows she wants to lose weight. So, is that IF for penance? Is that abstinence for penance? Or is it for your weight loss program, etc.? So, you see there the intention getting in the way. Hmm? Now, how do you decide the morality of an act? First of all, in order for an act to be ethical or moral, the moral object must be good. If the moral object is bad, there's no way you can make the act good. Why? Because the act in itself is pointed the wrong way. You can have all the good intention and you can surround it with the best circumstances, But if the act in itself is pointed the wrong way, then it's immoral. There was a brouhaha 15 years ago regarding the abortion law in England because they were concerned about the distress of the procedure to the fetus. So they wanted an abortion procedure that wouldn't stress the fetus. Come on, what's more stressful than killing him? No, you're killing him anyway. It's just like capital punishment. You have to do it in a way that you won't stress the poor criminal. So that's the reason why in the states now the by lethal injection, it's very quote unquote civilized, very humane. First, they inject a tranquilizer to bring down the metabolism and make the person relax. And then the second, because there are three, the second injection is a mild poison, mild, that really brings down the metabolism to almost dead. And then the third is the cyanide that really kills the person there, no? But by the time he's killed dead, he's killed, he's already sleeping and unconscious, and so he doesn't feel it. Yeah, seems like it's more humane rather than putting 20,000 volts through him and he writhes and he bubbles and he froths in the mouth, etc. You can see that he's really in agony, right? Or worse, you hang him. But it's all the same. The moral object is wrong. You're killing an innocent person. And somebody once said, yeah, but he's not innocent. He's a serial killer. Well, he was a serial killer, but at that moment he's innocent. You have to isolate the act at the moment of act. At that moment of executing a criminal, he's a helpless condemned criminal. He's not aggressing anyone. He's not killing anyone. He's there. He's tied to the gurney. That is the act. The execution of a criminal is the murder of a helpless human being. That's the reason why the whole morality behind capital punishment was changed with John Paul II, because precisely he showed this, that there is no way that you can, because the old, shall we say, defense for capital punishment was self defense. The self defense of society against an unjust aggressor, an incorrigible criminal who is a menace to society, and the only way society can protect himself from that criminal is by killing him. That's self-defense. That's justified it. But then John Paul II pointed out, in the present state of the penal system, you can neutralize the most dangerous of criminals. You don't need to kill him anymore. So if the real intention is self-defense, then that's it. Put him in isolation. Put him in a maximum security facility. So that's the defense of society. But if you still execute him, that's different. It's not anymore self defense, it's executing. That's what makes it wrong. Okay? Now, with these three things, again, I insist, the most important thing is to isolate the act that you're trying to figure out. What is the act here? Another example. Is it moral? Is it ethical to terminate a pregnancy if the pregnancy in itself is dangerous to the life of the mother? Think, for example, of an ectopic pregnancy. You have a blighted ovum there, or a fetus growing in the fallopian tube or even outside of it. And it's there growing, and there will come a time that it will cause maternal distress, and there's even eclampsia, and there wouldn't even be time to bring the mother to the ER, to the operating room. So therefore, you have to terminate the pregnancy. Isolate the act. What's the act? To relieve the mother of a potentially mortal, shall we say, development of a ectopic pregnancy. In other words, to terminate a pregnancy. Is that moral to terminate a pregnancy? Just isolate the act of terminating the pregnancy? Definitely it is. Okay? But there's a problem. When you terminate the pregnancy, it has a double effect. And what's one effect is to take away the danger from the mother, but the other effect is it puts there's the thing. The other effect. Is the other effect the killing of a fetus? If the other effect is the killing of the fetus, it's a double effect, right? Then it can never be right. If it's the killing of, okay, let me rephrase this. If the act in isolation is really just a termination of pregnancy, and the next act is a separate act of the mother being safe and the fetus possibly dying, 99% dying, okay? That is defensible. That's defensible. Because the act in itself is not to kill the fetus. The act was to terminate the pregnancy. It's just that that termination of pregnancy has two effects. One is good, but the other one is 99% sure that the fetus will die. But even with that, it's okay to do it because the two effects balance each other. I would even say the health of the mother outweighs the health of the fetus. Why? Because the mother is a mother and there are other children, there's a husband to take care of, etc., etc. So the life of the mother and the totality would seem to be more valuable than the possibilities of that fetus, who we don't even know what's going to happen, right? That's why termination of pregnancy in terms of an ectopic pregnancy is morally justified. But here's the point. It should be termination of pregnancy, not execution of the fetus. Huh? Yes. The act in itself must not be the execution of the fetus. What does that mean? You really have to remove the fetus and give the fetus the, the, the best chances of surviving, even if you know from the state of medical science that 99.99% that fetus is not viable. But what the doctor cannot do is terminate the pregnancy by, shall we say, aspirating the fetus because you're already killing the fetus. What has to be done is isolating the fetus, even if it's so undeveloped, and going through the motions, honest motions, of helping him, helping the fetus survive. It can never be by suction. Because when you suck out the fetus, you obliterate the fetus. Okay? You see the things here, no? That you have to isolate the act and look at what really you're doing and what that act means in terms of moral object, circumstances, and intention. With this, you realize that you it's possible to take away all the guesswork and the feel work from morality. However, the problem is when someone is caught in a situation like that, there's no time to think, there's no time to do all of this thing that we have just done now, right? And here's where virtue comes in because the virtue of prudence is what hones this skill in a person, such that everything that he does, he analyzes this way as a matter of form, as a matter of habit. But even with that, there will be occasions when the situation is really complicated for him, but not for the confessor, not for the moral advisor, who is confronted with the situations daily and has gone through them before. And so, therefore, what for the subject is a complicated thinking process, for that person, he has already met it before, he has already resolved it, and he knows what the answer is. And that's the reason why asking for advice is necessary. People should ask advice, no, and not from Dr. Love, but rather from the confessor. Hmm? you know, not these noontime shows, no, say Tia Deli of Gold before. So, not Tia Deli, but a real moral theologian, a confessor, no? Okay? Now, I'm finished. I'm ready to answer, to entertain questions. If not, we need to go. I'm sorry because this is already beyond time also, no? You should be doing other things already.
There are no questions
Cheryl has
naman
also
po,
arrived
Father.
home.
There are no questions naman po, Father, in the chat box.
Wait a minute. My speaker went to sleep. Oh,
Oh, Han, nakauwi ka na raw. Baka may question ka. Hinihintay ni Father yung question mo.
okay. So without any more questions, then maybe questions will come up next time. If you come up with something, bring it up. But get into the habit of analyzing moral problems this way. What is the moral object? The minute you can isolate that, then more than half the battle is won. Hmm? Perhaps just to close, the closing note here is this: the conscience is nothing but the human intellect applied to human acts, no, to judge their morality or immorality. Now, here's the thing: if one doesn't have a
Distorted.
well-formed conscience, in other words,
Distorted conscience.
he's an ignoramus, then he can think about these things very well. Like before and after this class, you have more things. You have just formed your conscience a quantum leap better, right? Now, consider those who didn't go through this class, then they don't have this kind of mindset. That's the first step, the formation of the conscience. But then there's a posterior step, which is the following: that if you don't follow your conscience, if a person doesn't follow his or her conscience, then the conscience gets jaded, frustrated, until it loses its sharpness. That's why you can see people, to you, what they're doing is so clearly immoral. How come they're doing it? Think of all these ghost projects, for example. Hindi ba nila nakita yun that they're depriving entire societies of their health, of their livelihood, of their safety? I can bet that the first time it must have bothered their conscience. But, sige na nga. And then, sige na nga ulit. And then the third time, it's a cinch. Hmm? They have justified it already. So that's the thing that happens with morality. Either we live or act according to our conscience, or we will deform the conscience to justify, to rationalize the way we are living or acting. Push that a little bit more. But why are we acting that way? And that's what we call vice. If our actions have already become vicious, the inveterate liar, the inveterate drunkard, the inveterate womanizer, the inveterate pleasure seeker, the shopaholic, whatever, no? Wala na. I mean, the passions have taken over, and he will have to retrain himself or herself not to act that way. Is that impossible? Of course not. It's possible. Why? Because we're free. One is always free. But is he? Precisely when one is already vicious, in other words, full of vices, then he's less free. His freedom is shackled by his passions, shackled by the, shall we say, repeated wrong acts. That's the reason why in Veritatis Splendor, that the magnificent document of John Paul II, where all of this is reviewed, he invented the term which I love. He said, setting freedom free. We have to set freedom free, free from ignorance and prejudices, and free from vices. Because only a person with a clear intellect, no prejudices, no presumptions, but can think clearly, as what we just did earlier when we dissected that act, and a will that's not shackled by passions, so that I can direct my will whichever way I think is right, and I won't be conditioned by my passions or by my preferences or whatever. That person is really free. That's why the saint, the virtuous person, is the most free. It's not true that, wow, look at you, so many hang ups, so many standards, so many commandments that you need to follow, you know. Precisely, but I follow them freely. Hmm? Nobody's dictating them to me. I follow them because I consider that's the right thing to do. No. The capacity to do the right thing, that's freedom. The incapacity to do the right thing, that's slavery. And there's so many slaves to their passions. You know, when you talk with a person who tells you, I can't help it, well, what's that? Then you're a slave if you can't help it. I can't help it. I binge on Netflix. I can't help it. I binge on Shopee or on Amazon. No, I can't help it. When I go to the mall, I end up shopping. No, buying rather, not just shopping. Well, okay, then you're not free. Okay,
Father, I
so
have a question. I
oh,
have
now
one
all of a sudden she has a question.
just
Okay.
one, Father. So, as you know, Father, there are people these days, even Catholics or not who are poorly, mainly Catholics who are poorly formed, or
Yes.
in especially in the West, there
Mm-hmm.
are people who are very passionate when it comes to, for example, defending uh, abortion
LGBT.
as a
Okay.
LGBT, or abortion as
Mm.
a human right,
Mhm.
precisely because they believe that this is kindness to the woman or kindness to the LGBT person. They
Mm.
actually believe that this is the moral thing, that
Mm.
they're defending the rights of these people. So would you say, Father, that their culpability is less if
Of
they do
course.
it? So their
Of course.
culpability is less.
It's less. That's the circumstance. The moral object is wrong, but then there's a circumstance which is ignorance, no, or deformed. No? That's the reason why we have to do apostolate. We have to get them out of that. And there's even a scenario here, no, that sometimes you know that a person is really good, but just because of ignorance, is doing something wrong. Then you start doing apostolate to change him, but he doesn't quite see it yet. Then you knowing that he doesn't quite see it yet, you know also that his culpability or her culpability is lessened by that ignorance. Knowing that, it could be an act of kindness on your part, not to belabor the point too much at this point in time, but rather to allow time, to allow her to strengthen her convictions, and not just her convictions, even her habits, no? So that, because it's better that she's acting ignorantly but thinking that she's doing the right thing than to know that it's the wrong thing and not being able to act accordingly because of all the deformation. You get the point? That's what we call the gradualness or the law of gradualness. We're not changing the morality, we're not changing the norms of ethics, but we're adopting the culpability, or rather, we're respecting the degree of culpability because of the state of the soul, the state of the person, the state of lack of virtue. So, better for him to be in that situation for the meantime rather than to really know it's wrong and not be able to act accordingly for lack of virtue. So, I have to form the virtue first. That's what you call the law of gradualness, not the gradualness of the law. The law is not gradual, it's black or white, it's wrong or right. Hmm? But the one applying it is gradual. Hmm? Okay?
Father,
Okay, good.
I have something to say. Question.
Mhm.
Last,
Yes, Marilu. Yes, yes.
yes, Father, I'm teaching medical doctors who specializes
Yes.
in aesthetics. No, many
Mm,
many years ago, I had this paper under Father Perez or Father De Torre, about
mm,
when I was taking my MBA,
mm.
Masters in Education. Anyway, I have I had a moral crisis because I've been teaching them enterprise development, and there's a lot of doctors now are really, um, without any moral background or
Consideration, yeah.
something. And yeah, they just check that they perform nose bridging or whatever. But it's now coming to a point that they are defining and restructuring the human person, and it's really bad for the on on many many things, no,
Mm,
especially on the dignity of the human person. So I started researching last this is the second semester, and may I submit my paper to for you to check, because I drafted it already and I discussed it among my students. They're already doctors, huh? But they are taking the course on enterprise development because they want to create their own clinic, and then they're just changing everything, on the about the human person, the dignity of the human person. And there is already the blur, there is already blurredness
mm.
on aesthetics and whatever surgical or cosmetic beauty is all about. So
Okay, it's like this, to cut to the chase. No? Um, the natural law is not, cannot be equated to naturalism, what is called naturalism, no? To let nature run its course and not to do anything that disrupts nature running its course. That's not the natural law. That's the error of naturalism. The natural law, rather, is the design of God for the human person and the universe. Now, that design includes the fact that we're rational, we know what's right, know what's wrong, and we know that God placed us on top of this world in order for us to subdue it, not to abuse it or just to subdue it in a selfish way, but to subdue it in a way that's in keeping with our nature of beloved children of God who's supposed to give him glory, etc., etc. Now look at this. In the matter of human aesthetics, the improvement of the way one looks or of one's anatomy, there's nothing wrong with that if it's an improvement. Hmm? If you're born with one short leg, well, definitely make it equal, no? If you're born with a deformed face, Or even just the simple matter of many Filipinos wanting a nose lift. If it's really going to improve your looks, then go ahead and do it, no? You don't have to do a Michael Jackson and start looking like the Planet of the Apes and things like that, no? But now, here's the point. Aesthetics is definitely disruptive of the original, shall we say, look. But it's an improvement. It's rational. That's okay. But then you have to weigh it against number one, the practicality of how these are the circumstances already. No, the moral object is good, the enhancement of the look, but then the circumstances. Is it too expensive that it's not commensurate anymore what you're spending? Not just for you, but for society. Or that what you're spending there, you could have saved a woman from dying at childbirth, or a woman from, or doesn't have to be a woman, another person from dying because of the lack of finances for what do you call this thing of cleaning the blood and things like that. So those are the circumstances, right? And remember, it's not enough to have circumstance. You have to have a good intention. If the intention is pure vanity, no, you look okay na, but you still want to, the typical things of the Kardashians. Now, why do you want to have such a big buttock anyway? Or such big boobs? Or I know
That's
somebody who thought that their boobs were too big, so now they've been reduced. So all of these things is already vanity, so there's, when it goes to that, then that's not good also. And that's the reason why there are three sources: the moral object, you have to isolate it, then look at the circumstances, and finally look at the intention. What is the real intention here? Is it just the improvement of the looks because it's something unbearable, or it's vanity already?
ang daming pangit.
All of these products. So you go to this, Koji, I don't know what, whitening, By the way, I use Koji,
So
but not for the,
bothered.
but not for the
I'm just
skin.
so
The
bothered.
Koji for the Koji rice to improve the protein. It's something that the Japanese use, no, or the Thais, they use it also. It's the
What do
same,
you
but
use, Father, for your skin? Because you have good skin.
But that's different because you mind is about breast augmentation. Just so many surgery. I'm
yeah.
so bothered.
So that's the thing there, that it shouldn't be vanity. No, I have a friend of gotten rich going to Saudi Arabia every month, and with a series of operations, not for nose enhancement, but nose reduction, because those Arabs think that they have big noses. So he made a killing out of that, no? So anyway, that's okay. If they
Yeah.
really look
Okay.
awful, no?
Isang
But
katulad.
if it doesn't look awful, then live with it, no?
Okay, thank you.
I
Pero,
know I know of some public personalities. One was just there ranting about the her brother being an addict, etc. And I was so shocked. No? Wow, how ugly she has become. Um, from all that operation, no?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or really the character that really I found very pathetic was Michael Jackson.
Yeah,
He really looked like the Planet of the Apes, no?
okay. Thank you, Father.
Okay, let's pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy
Holy
Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Holy Mary, our hope, seat of wisdom, pray
Pray
for
for
us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank
Now
you.
Thank you po,
I'm
Father.
going
Thank you,
I'm going to
Father.
change hats and go to cook mode.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
wow!
Father, baka
Thank you,
pwedeng
Father.
padala sa amin.
I'm going to
Thank you,
cook
Father.
mode.
Father, looking forward to it.
Thank you.
But I heard you were not coming.
I'm going, Father.
Okay, very good, very good. So don't don't make them inggit, no?
Oh, bakit di kami invited?
One of these days we have to do this group,
Yeah,
no?
yeah. Pag
By that
sa
time I'll
ending
have
natin,
Hmm.
oo.
Can you imagine today on my way
Natin
home,
cooking.
I passed by my butcher. And to my surprise, I did realize that all through the week I had been ordering my meats for tomorrow's work. And it was 10 kilos. So I have materials for pancetta, for guanciale, and for culatello there. So
Wow.
that's a lot of butchering that I'm going to do tomorrow. Okay. God
Okay,
bless
bye,
you. Bye.
Father. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
classmates.
Bye-bye.